When it comes to the swing characteristics of the upper core swing, the most important thing on the backswing is that the right hip turns the most with the least amount of lateral motion. So as you watch my backswing here, you are going to see that the right hip turns, and we could say I'm pivoting around the left side of my body. That is very important for an upper core player to understand that. The trail hip starts with the golf club, so we're going to see the right hip turn with the golf club. And you can see there at the top of my swing, my left arm is perfectly on plane and the right elbow sticking out a little bit, a la Jack Nicklaus. So upper core players are going to tend to have that right elbow flying or sticking out. When it comes to the transition, and this is key for an upper core player, the club has to slot. What that means is the club has to come down fairly straight down, and slotting means this club head is getting on plane or extremely close to the plane of the swing. A major fault in an upper core player swing is they turn their chest and hips early, and that gets the club head over the top of the plane with the shaft of the club too steep. And we see that all the time, and that is not a good place to be. That's kind of golfer's health. A lot of bad things can happen from there, and none of them are good. So I see all the time where a player gets to the top and the hands go out away from them. They get out in front of their head and their cap, and now the shaft gets too steep, and two things can happen from here. You keep coming and swing left through the ball, and that would be a solid strike. And then the other one is that when that happens, and then the other one is now the club tries to get back on the plane, and look what happens to the face of the club. You're fighting these forces and torques, and you can't square the club face. That was my big fault. I got steep, tried to get the club slotting or back on plane, and from there I could not square the club face because of the forces and torques and the balance of the club. But if the club is on plane and I don't turn early from the top, now the club can slot, and this is a little under the plane, but now the club can slot, and the club is going to want to rotate and square the club face. So you have help in the way the club is designed of squaring the face if you don't turn early from the top and slot the club and get the club head on plane. That's why it's very important in the start of this downswing to get the club on plane and slotting. Now you're going to see at this moment where the shaft of the club and the butt of the club is pointing toward the ball, that the upper core player is going to have the shaft above their right arm. So we're going to have that steepest angle coming down. If you look at a low core player, that shaft would be flattening as their body's shifting and rotating, so they would have a flatter shaft here. So the upper core players, when you see that shaft above the right arm like that, that is definitely a swing characteristic of an upper core player. And then the mid core is going to be in between this upper core and low core player. When we look at transition from face on, you're going to see the lower body shifting into the front foot. That's what's getting that club slotted and on plane, and the upper core player doesn't have a lot of lateral shift. They didn't have much on the backswing, and now just a little bit gets the weight in a good position for setting up for impact. You'll notice the upper core player, their right elbow, trail elbow, is going to be behind their rib cage, because upper core players will release the earliest as they posture up and stand up. As we look at this from down the line again, you're going to see as I come into the ball, you'll see my left leg pushing up, and the upper core player's greatest ground force is verticals. We are jumping. We are going vertical coming into the ball, and that helps give us some club head speed. Upper core players will swing the club past their hips and shoulders and we will get the most speed from our arms, hands, and wrists, not the big muscles, the hips and shoulders. If I say that the big muscles are the hips and the shoulders, and let's call that the big engine, and then if we look at the little muscles, the hands and the wrist and both arms, let's call those the little muscles or the little engine. Once we slot this club and shift our weight into our front foot, that little engine, our arms, hands, and wrist, is going to swing the club past our big engine, and the momentum of the club in our arms, hands, and wrist is going to pull us around to our finish. What we're going to see here is what I call release point. Where does the right arm straighten and point back, and the shaft of the club or the butt of the club point right at the center of the chest? It's right there. You can see my right arm has straightened, and that butt of the club is right at the center of the chest, and you can see that's happened somewhere a foot, maybe a little more than a foot past impact. We are going to see upper core players release from the ball to this position. You're going to see mid-core players release a little later, and then we will see the upper core players release the latest. Dustin Johnson's trail arm, his right arm, does not straighten until it gets about parallel to the ground past impact. And speaking of impact, the upper core player is going to have the hips the least amount rotated. You can hardly see my left hip or left leg here from down the line, and the weight is going to be in the balls of the feet. We are jumping. A lot of teachers and players are going to look at the characteristics of impact. An upper core player is going to have these characteristics. They're going to stand up, the hips are not going to be very rotated, and the forward shaft lean will be the least among the players. So what are they going to try and get us to do? They're going to try and get us to stay in posture, get our hips more rotated, and try to get more forward shaft lean here at impact. Those things are going to make the face more open. Then they want to change our grip and make our left hand grip stronger to put the final nail in the coffin, because upper core swings are not mid-core swings. And a lot of people are trying to be put into a mid-core swing that their swing characteristics are upper core. So it's okay to stand up with your hips not very rotated, with not that much forward shaft lean. And as I said, let that little engine swing the club past the big engine and pull you around to your finish.